Good day, beautiful people, and welcome back to Life Treasures and Golden Moments. This is Natalie Silva. It's good to be back with you again this month, the month of September. I'm sorry I missed you last month. It was kind of a busy month for August. But here we are, almost in the middle of the September, and it's fall just around the corner. It's been a fast summer. I hope everybody's doing well out there. We've had a lot going on in the world, and a lot of things that everyone is dealing with, and I think of you all the time, and remember you in my prayers, that things will be well for everyone. I've picked out some stories today that I hope will lift your spirits and make everyone feel a little bit better with all that's been going on, the anniversary of 9/11, and other issues going on in the world. So today I've picked the author Squire Rushnell's stories, two of them that I think you'll enjoy very much. And one of the stories is called Unanswered Prayers, and the second story from his book is called The Smartest Mistake. Winks on Unanswered Prayers. My son Grant is now a sweet young man in his 20s. He's challenged by a brain injury, but he's articulate and holds a job. He lives with friends of comparable skills and derives great joy from music. Grant astonishes people with his uncanny ability to sing and remember the lyrics to hundreds and hundreds of songs, particularly country western music. One of his favorite performers is Garth Brooks, whose music I've learned scores of times when we travel by car. One song sticks in my mind. Thank God for unanswered prayers. Just because he doesn't answer doesn't mean he doesn't care. Some of God's greatest gifts are unanswered prayers. Garth Brooks was singing about a man who was somewhere with his wife when he suddenly encountered an old girlfriend. Years before this was the girl of his dreams. He recalls that every night he prayed about her, asking God to make her mine. Now, with clarity of hindsight, it strikes him that she wasn't quite the angel he thought she was. If you're honest with yourself, you probably remember that this has happened to you. Your hormones might have been screaming that you found Mr. Right, the love of your life, or the girl of your dreams. You prayed that this person would feel the same about you. Then your prayer wasn't answered. You wondered or demanded, "Hey, God, why aren't you listening to me?" Perhaps another time you were convinced that you found exactly the right job, and you prayed hard for it, and it went to somebody else. Then there was that time that you wanted something so badly, a trip, an apartment, an event. You prayed for it, and it didn't happen. In each case, your prayer was not answered, at least not the way you had prescribed. But then, with a clear view of time, you were later able to realize that unanswered prayers are sometimes a real blessing. You could see how the guy or the girl would have been totally wrong for you, how that job would have prevented you from getting another job, a better job, or how that something that didn't happen was actually not in your best interest. Why me? Why now? So many times a candidate has prayed for good health. But this? The doctor spoke solemnly. You've got prostate cancer. We need to treat it right away. I'm sorry, but I'm afraid you'll have to drop everything you're doing, including your run for the Senate. He stared at his doctor. This wasn't a joke. As outlandish as it seemed, the guy was dead serious. Why? Why me? Were the words screaming inside of him. Alone he prayed that the doctor was wrong, or, if he wasn't, for a miraculous cure. He prayed for the wisdom to know what to do. And in a matter of hours, newsrooms throughout the state received notice that the candidate had scheduled an important news conference. The media seemed stunned as the candidate looked into the cameras and said, "We don't always know why these things happen to us in life, but in the end, they seem to have a way of working themselves out." That was May of 2000. 16 months later, on September 11th, 2001, We all found out why Rudolph Giuliani was still in the office of mayor for New York City. Think about it. If Giuliani had not had prostate cancer and had remained in the race for the Senate against Hillary Clinton, win or lose, he wouldn't have been mayor on 9/11. He would not have been the calming voice for a mourning and shocking nation. Why hadn't God answered Giuliani's prayers for healing? Was this an unanswered prayer? Was the prostate cancer God's way of placing Giuliani on the path he wanted him on, to fulfill his destiny for him? Giuliani believed so. My experience with cancer prepared me for what I had to do after 9/11, he said, to comfort families during those very difficult days. Perhaps Giuliani's terrible news had been matched by something in your own life, something that was delivered to you with the verbal grace of a sledgehammer. The doctor tried his best to be sympathetic, but telling you the unvarnished truth partly out of a sense of responsibility and partly out of fear of being sued made you wish he had sugarcoated it. Bottom line, something was wrong with you, something you never expected, something that happens to others. But why? Why me? Or maybe you associate those words with the day a company bureaucrat or a door downcast look and told you in a rehearsed voice their position was being downsized. It probably struck you that the corporate America's catchword for "you're fired" only sounds better to make them feel better. Once again, the primordial words surged from your lips. Why? Why me? Perhaps you heard the brutal message of a spouse, a message not entirely unexpected, but so fearful to face. It was subconsciously shoved way back in your mind, a message that hit you as a surprise even though it wasn't. I want a divorce. What? Why? Why? Why me? You cried. We've all had the experience of looking heavenward and asking God, why me? Terrible things happen to everyone. Sooner or later, we all have to walk through the valley. In the Bible, David never suggested we could go around the valley or over it. We all have to go through it. But the nice thing about valleys is that there is an end to them. No matter how dark it seems, there is a time when it will end and you'll break into the sunshine. And that is the concept you need to hang on to, that there is an end to terrible times, to the feelings of loss, of control, and to the total absence of suitable remedies. Valleys also have signposts. All along the way, God provides winks of reassurance for you to see, just like in the darkest interstate, a signpost every once in a while is a welcoming message of reassurance, a reminder that you are on track, to keep going. I'm an old man, and I have known a great many troubles, but most of them never happened. That was by Mark Twain. The second story I want to share from Rush's book is called The Smartest Mistake. She needed money, a single mom with 2 kids to raise. Ruth Fertel wasn't making ends meet at Tulane University as a lab technician. The ad in the paper seemed to jump out at her. For sale, Chris Steakhouse. A veteran of New Orleans restaurateur, Chris Malachuk, was selling his business. I could do that, said Ruth positively. That was a big idea. Having experience running a restaurant was not something on Ruth's resume. But she had faith in God. She believed in herself, and she knew that the name Chris Steakhouse had great value. For 40 years, they'd built up a local clientele. All she had to do was keep it going. So Ruth Fertel mortgaged her house for $18,000 to buy the restaurant. From that day forward, the woman with a degree in chemistry and physics learned restaurant management on the job. I don't know whether I was naive or just plain old stupid, but I never thought I would fail, she said years later. The hours were terrible, but customers saw how hard I was working. and they wanted me to succeed. Besides, I thought my employees would respect me more if I worked right alongside them, so I did. For the next 10 years, her business grew stronger and stronger and stronger. They went from selling 35 steaks a day to 250. Then disaster struck. Her restaurant burned to the ground. She owed a large sum of money, so if she didn't reopen right away, she'd be bankrupt. Moreover, being out of sight, out of mind for any length of time would be deadly for the business. What to do, what to do? Ruth was in tears when she arrived at her banker's office, hoping he might have an idea. "Why didn't you just reopen in the building you already own, down the street?" suggested the banker. Ruth thought about it. Not a bad idea. She purchased the other location nearby for wedding receptions and private parties. But how could she get it ready quickly? Then a God wink. It just so happened that a man who did construction was in the bank at the same time. And he said to Ruth he could get a new location open in a week, and he did. But just as they were about to move in, Ruth was given more bad news. Her attorney reminded her that the original agreement stipulated that the name Chris Steakhouse could only be used in the original location. By moving to a new address, she could be sued. Now what to do? She couldn't very well change the name of a business that she spent a decade building up, not to mention the untold value of the prior 40 years in which the restaurant operated under that name. Ruth thought about it for a moment. She said a quick prayer. "I don't have time to do a marketing study on the name, and I just can't afford a lawsuit, so just put my name in front." "So just put my name in front," she said, "and that's it." She said decisively to her attorney, and again later that day, to her sign maker and her menu printer. They all looked at her blankly. "Just add my name in front of it," she repeated to them. "Just call it Ruth's Chris Steakhouse." It was a mouthful, and we're not talking steak. Almost without missing a beat, Ruth opened in the new location just 7 days later. When her restaurant had burned to the ground, she had looked heaven upward and said, "Why me, Lord?" Then when she rolled up her sleeves and got to work at solving the problem, a wonderful blessing unfolded. Another God wink. The original restaurant only sat 60 people. That caused a 2-hour wait to get in, discouraging some potential customers. But the new restaurant, Ruth's Chris Steakhouse, seated 160. "Business just boomed again," said Ruth. The following year, Ruth started franchising. That's when she learned that outside of New Orleans, the name was a serious liability. People seemed to be continually mispronouncing Chris's Ruth. One man in San Antonio called it the stupidest name he'd ever heard, and only after he was coached and tasted the steak did he change his mind. Like every other time, Ruth said a prayer and faced the name problem head on. In Baton Rouge, Houston, and Dallas, she came up with an advertising campaign that said, "We know we have a funny name, but we have great steaks." Another ad boldly said, "Our steak is so extraordinary it needs 2 names." Soon food critics, charmed by the odd name and the self-depreciating advertising, started writing about the restaurants, giving Ruth's Chris Steakhouse top-notch ratings. Facing the devastation of having her restaurant being destroyed by fire was one thing, but coming up with that name at the last minute, that was the smartest mistake I ever made, said Ruth Fertel. Over the years, Ruth uttered many prayers, asking the Lord to help her build her business, but having a fire destroy her restaurant wasn't one of them. Later, she could see that the fire was an unanswered prayer. It moved her into a larger space and inspired the unique name that we all know today. At nearly 90, Ruth's Chris Steakhouse is all across America. I just ran across a little saying by Dolly Parton, which brings me into the segue of the next turn. She said, "If you want to see rainbows, you got to put up with the rain." How true it is. The next story is called Looking for the Rainbows, about the simple pleasures of life. The author is Tina Grover. What's that sound, Mummy? My sweet 3-year-old daughter Ashley sat in her car seat in the back of the van as we bumped along the road toward town from our home in rural Idaho. As I glanced in the mirror and saw her worried face looking back at me, I had to admit I was wondering the same thing. Did that knocking sound mean that our old van was dying? Oh, it's just the van bouncing, honey. It's okay. Hey, look over there at that baby lamb, I said as I pointed out the window to distract her. She didn't need to worry about this. I silently wished I could find something to distract myself as more worries surfaced. What would my husband and I do if this van died? Brandon had quit his job a few months before to start his own cabinet business. It had been a goal of ours that we had been working on and towards for years. And although we felt it was the right time, things were very tight for our little family. I had put off this trip to the store for as long as I could, knowing that we didn't have money for much, not much more than the bare essentials. The only reason I was finally shopping was that we had run out of toilet paper. Just get me to the store and back, I thought. I was nearing the end of my pregnancy with our third child, and my oversized tummy seemed to always be in the way. At that moment, I felt beaten down. I was tired. I was huge, and I was on the verge of tears. Just when I felt like I couldn't handle one more thing, it started to rain. Mommy, look! There's the store. Ashley's enthusiastic giggle brought me back to the task at hand, and I turned into the parking lot. I was happy to spy a parking space right near the front of the store. We wouldn't have to walk far in the rain. Just then a car came from nowhere and pulled in front of me to get the space. The stress and the worry that I had felt moments before turned instantly into anger. What was wrong with that guy? Couldn't he tell that I wanted that parking spot? I simmered as I looked around for another space that was close to the store. My attitude got worse when I pulled into the open parking space, and there on the ground next to us was a puddle of oil. The rainwater was adding to its size by the second. I knew this was going to be a problem. My little Ashley loved to splash in puddles, no matter what was in them. Getting her out of the car seat, I said, Ashley, you need to hold on to my hand. Mommy can't carry you because my big tummy is in the way. So hold on tight to my hand, okay? She nodded, and her short brown pigtails bounced. She was very compliant until she saw that puddle. She shook free of my hand and ran toward it before I could stop her. In that instant, I visualized oily shoes, oily little pants, and socks, and if I was not able to move any faster than I was currently going, oily handprints on her pink ruffled shirt by the time I got to her. Could this day get any worse? First the van, then the rain, then the parking space, and now I was looking at having ruined clothes that I could not afford to replace. Then suddenly, Ashley stopped short of the puddle, and in a quiet voice she said, Look, Mommy, look! Rainbows! Her fat little finger pointed out, the oil mixing with the rainwater and creating swirls of color. She was enthralled with what she knew was the most beautiful thing she could have ever seen. That is when it all changed for me. A moment before, I had been unable to focus on more than the puddle of oil on the ground and the many other things that were making my life hard. I was worried about so much that I could not see. I couldn't see anything anywhere around me. I stood in the parking lot with tiny drops of rain coming down on my head, and I watched my little daughter teach me that we don't have to look far to find beauty in life. Life is full of it, even in the most unusual circumstances. Where moments before I saw only an oily mess waiting to happen, She had seen beautiful rainbows. I stood for a minute and thought about what a wonderful shift had just taken place in my way of thinking. The baby inside me kicked, and I rubbed my overgrown stomach, excited to meet this new little child. I wasn't even worried about the van. Somehow we will make it. We had done harder things, I thought, as Ashley pointed out a particular bright circle of color. I held her hand, and after a minute we jumped the tiny puddle of rainbows together and walked into the store. Ashley squeezed my hand, and with a happy little bouncy giggle, she said, "Mommy, Mommy, we're so lucky to see those rainbows, weren't we?" Yes, honey, we were. Indeed, we were. I would love to give a shout out and a special thank you to Squire Rushnell and to our author of Looking for the Rainbows, Tina Grover, for helping to lift our spirits today and giving us something to think about as we walk on our life's journey. I hope that you find many joys in your life this week, this month, and things will be bright and beautiful, and that you can see the rainbows. In closing, I want to remind you that they say rainbows are apologies for an angry sky. And those rainbows are out there to cheer us all up. So keep looking for the rainbows. Remember to share love and be kind to others and help people when you can. That's what it's all about. You're all very special. And don't forget that. You all have your special gifts to give and make this world a better place. Until next time, take care and may God bless. This is Natalie Silver with Life Treasures and Golden Moments.